I never imagined I would be in a situation like this, let alone sharing it with the world. But after everything that happened, I need to get this off my chest. Losing my job was bad enough, but finding out the real reason behind it, that nearly broke me. My boss did not fire me because of poor performance or company cutbacks. He did it to protect himself, to bury a secret he never wanted exposed. What he did not know was that I had proof. A single recording that changed everything. Let me start from the beginning. I had been working at the company for nearly 5 years. It was not my dream job, but I was good at it, and I had worked hard to build a reputation as someone reliable. My role as an executive assistant to Daniel Carter, one of the senior managers, meant I handled everything from scheduling meetings to coordinating projects. It was demanding, but I took pride in my work. Daniel was the kind of boss who seemed perfect on paper, charismatic, well-dressed, and always saying the right things in front of the higher-ups. But behind closed doors he was different. He had a temper, a habit of blaming others for his mistakes, and an ego so big it barely fit in the office. I had learned how to navigate his moods, keeping my head down and doing my job. Things started to shift when a new hire joined the company. Her name was Olivia, and she was young, ambitious, and undeniably beautiful. She worked in the marketing department, but it quickly became clear that she had caught Daniel's attention. At first, I thought it was harmless flirtation between a manager and an employee. It was not my business. But then I started noticing things. The way Daniel would accidentally schedule meetings that only involved Olivia. The long lunches where they both disappeared without explanation. The lingering touches, the whispered conversations. I was not the only one who saw it, but everyone else pretended not to. No one wanted to cross Daniel. I kept my observations to myself. I was there to do my job, not get involved in office drama. But then one day, I made a mistake. A simple one really, an email mix-up. I had been sending out a calendar invite for an executive meeting, and somehow, I accidentally attached the wrong file. Instead of a generic meeting agenda, I had sent out a document that contained a private conversation between Daniel and Olivia. It was nothing too incriminating, but it was enough. Enough to suggest something more than a professional relationship. Enough that if the wrong person saw it, questions would be asked. The moment I realized my mistake, my stomach dropped. I tried recalling the email, but it was too late. People had seen it. And one of those people was Daniel. That evening, I was called into his office. He was furious, pacing back and forth behind his desk. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" he snapped, slamming a folder down on the table. I swallowed hard. "It was an accident, Daniel. I did not mean to. I do not care what you meant." His voice was low, dangerous. "You have put me in a very difficult position." I knew then that there was no talking my way out of this. He was not just angry, he was scared. Scared that his secret would get out. I expected a warning, maybe even a write-up. But I never expected what came next. "You are fired." The words hit me like a slap. "What? You heard me," he said, crossing his arms. "Pack your things. You are done here." I stared at him in shock. "Daniel, please, you cannot be serious. This was a mistake. I have worked here for years." "And now you do not," he interrupted, his tone cold. "Security will escort you out." Just like that, my career was over. No notice, no severance, nothing. As I left his office, my hands were shaking. It was humiliating. People were watching, whispering. I had been loyal to that company for years, and this was how it ended. But as I walked out of that building for the last time, one thought kept running through my mind. This is not over. That night, I sat on my couch, still trying to process everything. One mistake. One accidental email. That was all it had taken for Daniel to throw away 5 years of my hard work. I went through every emotion, anger, frustration, humiliation. But one feeling stood out the most: betrayal. He had used me as a scapegoat to protect himself, to cover up his affair, and he had not even hesitated. For hours, I stared at my laptop screen, debating my next move. I could file a complaint with HR, but Daniel was a senior manager. He had connections. He could spin this however he wanted. Even if I proved the firing was unfair, what could I do? Get my job back and work under a boss who hated me? No, I needed something stronger. Something undeniable. Then I remembered something. A few months ago, Daniel had started using a habit that annoyed me to no end. He would call me into his office for off-the-record conversations, where he would say things he would never put in writing. These talks usually involved blaming other employees, cutting corners on projects, and making snide comments about the executives. It had been risky for me to be in those conversations, so I started protecting myself. I had an app on my phone that recorded audio when I activated it. I had never planned to use it, just something for my own security in case things ever went south. And now things had definitely gone south. My heart pounded as I opened my saved files and scrolled through the recordings. There were a lot of meaningless conversations, small office rants, but then, there it was. A conversation from 2 weeks ago. I clicked play. Daniel's voice filled the room. If anyone finds out about Olivia and me, I am screwed. HR will not just fire me, they will ruin me. That is why I need you to keep things under control. Then my own voice. Daniel, you know this is a bad idea. Office relationships like this. I do not care, just keep it quiet. Daniel interrupted. And if anything goes wrong, well, that is what assistants are for, right? To take the fall. I exhaled sharply. There it was. He had said it himself. If anything went wrong, I was the one who would take the fall. And that was exactly what had happened. I replayed the recording over and over, feeling my anger grow stronger each time. He had planned this. Maybe not my exact firing, but he had always seen me as disposable. Not anymore. I had proof now, and I was going to use it. The next morning I called a lawyer. I explained my situation, and after listening to the recording, she confirmed what I already suspected. This was not just wrongful termination. This was workplace misconduct, retaliation, and a potential lawsuit waiting to happen. Daniel is in a high position, my lawyer said. But this recording changes everything. You have leverage now. I leaned back in my chair, my mind spinning with possibilities. For the first time since losing my job, I did not feel powerless. But I also knew I had to be careful. Daniel was ruthless, and if he found out what I was planning, he would do whatever it took to silence me. So I made a plan. Step 1, gather more evidence. Step 2, make sure the right people heard it before Daniel could spin the story in his favor. Step 3, watch everything come crashing down. I had spent years playing by the rules, staying quiet while people like Daniel walked all over others. Not this time. I knew I had to be smart about my next move. If I acted too soon, Daniel could find a way to twist things in his favor. If I waited too long, he might hear rumors and try to get ahead of it. Timing was everything. After consulting with my lawyer, we decided on a strategy. Instead of confronting Daniel directly, I would send the recording and supporting documents to HR and the company's legal department anonymously. That way, they would be forced to investigate before Daniel could manipulate the situation. I took a deep breath before hitting send. There was no turning back now. For a few days, nothing happened. No calls, no emails, no news. I started to wonder if they were ignoring it, if Daniel was too powerful for this to matter. But then on a Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an old coworker. Something is going down. HR just called Daniel into a closed-door meeting. People are saying it is serious. My pulse raced. It was happening. Over the next few hours, I received more updates. Apparently, the recording had sent shockwaves through the company. Not only did it prove that Daniel had fired me for personal reasons, but it also exposed his affair with Olivia, his unethical behavior, and the way he manipulated employees to protect himself. I could only imagine his face when they played the recording for him. By the end of the day, my coworker called me. "You are not going to believe this," she whispered excitedly. "Daniel is on leave effective immediately. HR sent out a memo saying they are launching a full investigation." A weight lifted off my chest. It was working. But then something unexpected happened. I received an email from Olivia. The subject line read, "We need to talk." Curious, I agreed to meet her for coffee the next day. When she arrived, she looked nervous, her fingers twisting around the cup. "I did not know he was going to fire you," she said quickly. "I swear, I had no idea." I studied her face. She seemed genuinely shaken. "Then why are you here?" She hesitated before sighing. "Because Daniel is trying to pin everything on me." I frowned. What do you mean? He told HR that I was the one who suggested your firing, she admitted, her voice bitter. That I wanted you gone because I was jealous. He is trying to save himself by throwing me under the bus. It did not surprise me. Daniel was exactly the type of man to betray someone the moment it benefited him. So what are you going to do? I asked. She exhaled. I do not know. But if you are planning anything else against him, I want in. I studied her for a long moment. Olivia had been complicit in Daniel's lies, but she had also been manipulated just like I had. And I was not about to let Daniel get away with this. I might have a few ideas, I said. And just like that, the game was not over yet. With Olivia on my side, we had a new advantage, her insider knowledge. She had access to emails, records, and conversations that could further prove Daniel's pattern of manipulation. She had stayed quiet before out of fear, but now that he had betrayed her, she was ready to talk. The first thing she did was forward me a series of emails between her and Daniel. In them, it was clear that Daniel had been pulling the strings, pressuring her into keeping their relationship a secret and making sure no one questioned his authority. Even worse, there were messages where he discussed ways to deal with employees who got too close to the truth. My name was on that list. I immediately forwarded the emails to my lawyer. This is solid proof of retaliation and workplace misconduct, she said. Not only can you take legal action, but HR cannot ignore this now. At this point, the investigation into Daniel had already begun, but with Olivia's evidence, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. HR had no choice but to widen the scope, interviewing employees who had worked under Daniel. One by one, more people came forward. Stories of mistreatment, cover-ups, and unethical decisions piled up. Then came the final blow. Olivia agreed to give a formal statement about everything. Her relationship with Daniel, how he had used his power to control her, and the way he had retaliated against me to cover up his tracks. HR took it seriously. There was no way they could keep this quiet anymore. Within a week, Daniel was officially terminated. The company sent out an internal memo stating that he had violated multiple workplace policies, though they kept the details vague. But people knew. The whispers turned into full-blown conversations. His downfall was all anyone talked about. As for me, I received an unexpected call from the company's legal team. We would like to discuss a settlement, they said. At first, I wanted to fight it out in court, but my lawyer advised me to consider my options. A legal battle could take years, and while I wanted justice, I also wanted to move on with my life. In the end, we negotiated a settlement that included financial compensation, a formal apology, and the agreement that my firing would be expunged from my record. It was not perfect, but it was a win. And Daniel, well, he did not land on his feet the way he probably thought he would. His reputation was ruined, and with the scandal attached to his name, no reputable company wanted to hire him. Last I heard, he was struggling to find work, blaming everyone but himself. Poetic justice, if you ask me. A few weeks after everything settled, I sat in my apartment, reflecting on how drastically my life had changed. Losing my job had felt like the worst thing that could have happened to me. But in the end, it was the beginning of something better. For so long, I had played by the rules. I had been the employee who stayed late, worked extra hours, and never complained. I thought loyalty and hard work would be enough to protect me. But Daniel had taught me a harsh lesson. Some people would take everything you give and discard you the moment you are no longer useful to them. But what he did not expect was that I would fight back. Looking back, I realized that if I had just walked away quietly, Daniel would have continued to abuse his power. I was not the first person he had wronged, but I made sure I was the last. The fact that he was no longer in a position to hurt anyone else gave me a sense of satisfaction that no job could have given me. As for Olivia, she resigned shortly after Daniel was fired. We had not been friends before all of this, but in a strange way, we became allies in the aftermath. She admitted that she had ignored a lot of red flags about Daniel, but when it came down to it, she chose to do the right thing. I respected that. One day she sent me a text. I finally feel free. Thank you for not giving up. It made me realize that this whole ordeal was not just about me getting justice. It was about exposing the truth, about standing up to someone who thought he was untouchable. As for my own future, I decided to take a different path. Instead of jumping into another corporate job, I took time to reassess what I really wanted. I had skills, experience, and a strong work ethic. I did not need to be at the mercy of another Daniel. So I started my own consulting business. It was terrifying at first, but it was also liberating. I set my own hours, worked with people who actually valued my expertise, and never again had to worry about office politics. One afternoon, while sipping my coffee and answering emails, I got another message from a former coworker. You would not believe what I just heard. Daniel applied at 3 different companies, and guess what? HR teams are doing background checks now. Your case made it into industry circles. He is screwed. I smirked. I was not the type of person to celebrate someone's downfall, but in Daniel's case, I would make an exception. Karma had a way of catching up, and I was finally at peace.